Welcome to the first of a series of 4 different videos that subject matter deals with what you might or might not know about thermal modification. Your host today, myself, Robert Lennon. I'm one of the principal owners of ThermalWood Canada, and I want to talk to you about the difference in the technologies that are out there, what the process does, and give you a much better understanding so you can spec this properly on any of the projects that you're going to do, or if you're a consumer and you want to purchase this, that you have a better understanding of what you're looking for. So allow me to share my screen here with you, and we can start through a bit of a slideshow that I put together to talk more about what thermal modification is. You can call it thermally modified, you can call it cooked, roasted, torrefied. A lot of different industries have different names for it. People call it different things. In addition to all these different names for it, there are also different manufacturers. So there are manufacturers of these ovens in Finland, in Germany, in Italy, in France. There's a Russian-Chinese technology out there, and the Canadians have also put technology together. So today it's all about understanding what are some of the different nuances between the different technologies, and at the same time be able to prepare you so that you can do a much better job in speccing this in one of your projects and understanding what the product is going to be doing. So basically what's happening is that we're treating wood at a very high temperature and creating a natural chemical reaction between the lignins and the hemicellulose that are the main chemical components of wood. The modification of these chemical elements have an impact on the physical and also on the mechanical properties of the wood. So that's what we're going to be talking about today and explaining a little bit more about that. So some of the key characteristics that we have out there, and there's advantages and also limitations to this. So some of the advantages that you get from thermally modified wood is structural stability. There's a slight reduction in the bending strength, but you get the structural stability. And what that really means is that the wood will not take any moisture from the air. We've done some testing where we've actually put the wood inside a container at 65-70% relative humidity, and left it in there for a month, 2 months to see whether or not there would be an increase in moisture content, and there was none after that period of time. I'll go through the process in a bit, but when I go through it, I'll be explaining to you that we do introduce moisture back into the wood, and that's the number that's stable as it went through this testing. So there's there's a little bit of swelling or contraction of the wood, but very minimal to what it was before. We also have resistance in decay because we've removed a lot of the organic properties that cause the wood to rot. Same thing with fungus. They need food to eat from. The same thing with insects. Now, when it comes to insects, wood ants, those kind of things are not attracted to the wood. Termites, on the other hand, are a little bit of a different animal. Testing that we've done on the termites has been direct testing where we've actually put wood on top of the termite mounds and over a period of time observed what happened. And in this particular case, the testing that we've done showed that for the first 3 or 4 months that the wood was on top of the termite mounds, that there was no degradation of the wood. But once they did get to it, they did. So we have a treatment for termites that we use. It's also a treatment we use for coating the wood, which I'll talk about a little bit later. The product is also environmentally friendly. We do not use any chemicals whatsoever in our process. The only thing that we use is heat and steam. The chemical elements of the wood are changed, but we do not expose or bring in any more chemicals into the process as we go through it. The other thing that happens is the appearance. So you take woods that are normally white, yellowish color, and now all of a sudden we've translated that into a nice brown rich color. And the higher you go in temperature, actually the darker that you would end up getting with the wood. And there are some nuances with the different species. So like a white ash would end up being a lot darker than a maple, for instance, and a maple would be darker than you would get on a poplar, maybe. So various species are already a little bit darker to start with, and will end up being a bit darker as we go through. But the other thing is that the color is through and through the wood. It's not just a surface application. It's not just something that happens on the surface. So all the elements of the characteristics that I brought up here and talked to you about are actually through and through the wood. So if you use something that's 2-inch thick, it's all the way through. If it's 1-inch thick, it's all the way through. So I wanted to make sure that that was an important part. Some of the limitations are, though, is that, as I mentioned about a while ago, you lose about 10% bending strength. And because of that, people are reluctant to use it for structural members unless you design it knowing that there's 10% less in the bending strength. So not recommended for structural applications, only because we don't do the calculations. But if you're willing to go through the process of manually doing the calculations and then taking into consideration that 10% bending strength, then you can use it in certain applications through there. The other limitation to this is that all woods go gray after a period of time. And that time depends on the amount of inherent oil that is inside the wood. Well, through the process, and when we're getting up to temperatures of 200 degrees or 212 degrees, we actually remove all of those oils from the wood, and therefore there's no protection. So you put that outside and put it underneath the UV and rain, both the weathers that we have here in North America, and the wood will end up turning gray in a very short period of time. When I talk about short, I talk about short. You can get the wood grayed up in about 3 months. If you put a brown piece of wood outside today and put another one across it and go and look at it the next day, you'll already see a shadow that exists there. So that's one of the things to take into consideration. But there are coatings that protect it against UV light, and we'll talk about that in subsequent series of these workshops that we will be delivering. One thing to take into account also is the fact that we have, excuse me for that, we end up having, we can treat anything that's wood, various species, from poplar to birch to maple to oak to ash to walnut to mahogany, pine, cedar, you call it, we can do it. And we've so far to prove that is that we probably have about 200 different recipes that we tried of various species, and each species that we do end up with the same characteristics. The difference meaning that would be there is the fact that some species take a lot more time to process than others, and that's something to take into consideration. And as I talked about a while ago, in all these species, color becomes differential too. When we're talking about walnut and mahoganies, those are already dark colors. But what's interesting, what happens through that is that, especially walnut, everybody knows what a brown walnut color looks like, but walnut itself in nature has heart and sapwood, and so you end up with some white woods that are actually walnut. But through our process, what happens is that the darker colors get a little bit darker, and the white colors get dark. So what you end up doing is that you almost end up dry cleaning out the wood. And so for walnut, and people that use it a lot in furniture manufacturers, they've been telling me that there's probably about 40 to 50% waste factor in walnut. Well, this could take their waste factor and actually change it around and reduce it substantially as we go through. The technology is not new. The technology has been around since the early 90s. And as you can see by the map here, this is the North American maps. Few of the players have changed. This is a couple of years old, but we're still about in the same amount. There's about 12 operators in North America, and they're all on the East Coast because there's a European influence. If you look at the right-hand side here, these are the operators that exist in Finland and in around those countries. And now there's starting to be a few more populating all over the area, but the majority is there, and a lot of the processors and the big processors are there. The difference between a lot of the stuff that's happening in Europe and what we're doing here is that they don't have a whole pile of hardwoods. So most of the operations that are here are based on softwood production to be able to compete against the pressure-treated lumber that's out there. Whereas in our case, we've opened up the doors by thermally modifying a lot of hardwoods and using them in an outdoor application, like ash used for decking, maple, birch, ash, oak used for siding, outdoor furniture. So this is opening up markets for species of wood that never had a chance to work in those markets before, and now they can be applied to the outside, so it really opens that up a little bit more. So let's talk a little bit about the process, because everybody, no matter what the technology is, all follow the same three phases. The first phase being the drying phase, the second phase being a thermal modification phase, and the final phase being cooling and conditioning phase. As you can see up above here, different temperatures are associated to different qualifications, whether it's a softwood or whether it's a hardwood. And so a thermal S would be focusing in on a interior application where you need less color, you want a lighter color, it doesn't need to be as resistant to the environment for decay, and there's less issues with humidity, and so now you have some choices. But if you're going to put this out in an outdoor application, then you have to go to a thermal D. The thermal D, the most crucial point there is structural stability. So putting this outside where it's going to be wet and getting a lot of humidity, you don't want to get into a situation where you're going to be destroying the wood, and you will if you use a thermal S in an exterior application. So you can tell by the temperatures for softwoods, you're looking at 212 degrees for a thermal D, where it's 200 degrees for a hardwood. So when you're putting this into your specs, you should be asking for a thermal S or a thermal D. Very important, because that could change the whole application, and it could change the whole results that you're looking for. So it's extremely important to make sure that you do that. The other thing too that doesn't come into consideration too much, what needs to be considered is the amount of time that it spends inside the oven, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get through. But I wanted to mention it now because the biggest variable is in the first phase, because this is the drying phase. This is where we take the wood from 10% or 12 or 15% moisture down to zero. Because when it meets the crest of moving from phase 1 to phase 2, the moisture content at this point needs to be zero. Because if you leave any moisture in the wood as it starts to climb up, what ends up happening is that this doesn't work like a microwave. So it's from outside in. So you get a case hardening around the outside of the wood, and then it entraps any moisture. And then when the temperatures equate on the inside of the wood to the outside, you blow up the whole inside of the wood, and you end up honeycombing that wood. So you won't notice it right away, but it'll have a major impact on the longevity and the quality of the wood that you're going to get. So it's important to find out when you're talking to some of the operators how much time that it spends inside the oven. We've done a whole pile of R&D, physical properties, talking about stability, resistance to decay. We've done a lot of research on glues because this doesn't soak up water, so you got to look at using PVA glues, polyvinyl acetate glues. We talked about aging a while ago. The other part is tone, and this wood is sold a lot in the music industry because it replaces about 35 years of natural air drying. And then we touched briefly on surface treatment, which we will in the follow-up workshops that we'll do. This research is all available for you if you care to get all the numbers that we went through and what species that we checked out. Please get in contact with us at www.thermalwoodcanada.com, and we'll get a hold of you at that point and give you the information that you're looking for. It's important because I wanted to talk about this one because there's research that was done in the last 3 years that was trying to go above and beyond the thermal S and thermal D research that was done in Finland. And by the way, if you want a whole pile of information on research that's been done, I would recommend that you look at the website www.ThermalWood Association. So ThermOwood Association.fi. So they're the only governing body in the world that has set those standards, and they have a whole pile of information in their handbooks that will give you some additional information if you're actually looking for it. So look for those. But this was another study that was done that they were trying to class it between a very high resistant and slightly non-resistant from a D1 to D2 to an S4. And they did that both in the hardwoods and in the softwoods. And what I wanted to point out through this is that because of different manufacturers, and we talked about a while ago, the higher you go in temperature, the darker the color. The higher you go in the temperature, the more impact that you have on the strength and changes that you have on the wood. And if you look at here on manufacturer 4 and look at white ash, you're running at 200 degrees and you get a D1 classification. Whereas up here in manufacturer 1, 220 degrees, you also get a D1. So my questions are all the time, so why would you want to increase and go that extra 8 degrees? Because it's going to have a major impact on the quality of the wood. And you get the same type of and I'm sorry, I should say 20 degrees, and you're getting the same classification of being very highly resistant. So keep that in mind as you're going through and ask those questions as you go through with the clients. Now let me stop sharing here and get back to myself. So if you're a member of any of the architectural associations and you want to get some points to this, I would ask you to please send me an email at thermalwoodcanada@yahoo.ca, and I will send you a small questionnaire and an evaluation of the course. And with the information I get from you, once you successfully participate in all 4 of the series, you will have your hour in and you'll be able to get your points, educational points for this. So if you're interested in getting your points through this, please send me an email requesting the form work, and I'll send it to you, and then we'll take care of the rest from there. So thank you very much for participating today. Hopefully this was helpful for you to understand a little bit more about the process of thermal modification. And stay tuned for the next one that will be given on November 11th. Thank you very much. Have a great day.